Hi, my name's Sarah, and I'm a conscious leadership and women in leadership coach, and I help executives and leaders reach the next level of their performance by becoming more forward-thinking, self-aware leaders, which helps them to build a winning culture and winning teams. So I've worked in a lot of change projects in the past, and sometimes I get asked to come in and rebuild teams after change, rebuild being the operative word, okay? And this leads to questions about, well, how do I know what's going on with my team during change? What are some of the common emotions that employees experience during change? And there's a really well-known model. It's called the Kubler-Ross Curve. And the Kubler-Ross Curve was designed really to look at grief. What happens at grief? You know, when you've had a bereavement, for example, what are the stages that people go through? And it was understood that this bereavement curve, the change curve, the grief cycle can be applied to any change in life, because generally speaking, what you probably need to understand as a leader is that people don't always like change, particularly certain styles of employees. Some people thrive on it a bit, others don't like it so much. And that people go through change in different paces, in different ways. It's not a one size fits all. Sometimes you may have to repeat your message many times before it's understood about, well, what's the rationale for the change? And so you're going to need to explain that rationale, be visible with your team and the key messages around the change to help people understand. You might have to have a few group conversations, ongoing conversations, repeat the message. I think now in marketing, they say, repeat your message 7 times. So take that as a yardstick. But particularly when people are going through this grief cycle, the change curve, they're not always absorbing information because their brains are really trying to focus on what the change is about. How does it affect me? And that's human nature. It doesn't make them bad people. That's just how humans react to change. People go through shock, denial, frustration, even depression. Anger can come in under frustration as well. So it really starts with the shock, denial, frustration. And if that's not dealt with, it can sink into depression. And sometimes people start bargaining as well, as in, if I do that, can it just stay the same? So those are just the broad bucket headlines of that beginning of the change cycle. And typically it goes like this, where people kind of go down and then they start to accept the change and think, well, okay, maybe I can do this and maybe I can do that. Maybe I can accept this. And then they start to think about, it's called experimenting. How am I going to work within this new culture? How am I going to adapt to this change? And then make a decision about how to move forward. And then it's called integration, where the changes are embedded and integrated within the individual. That's what that means. So all sorts of emotions. And the leader, it's worth you knowing about that curve. It's called the Kubler-Ross curve. Every single human being goes through it. I bet if you look back through your life, you can see the ways in which you acted during change. And sometimes, you know, I've heard leaders say to me, I just don't understand how that person's behaving. They're being so immature, they're being this. We don't want that. We want above the line leadership, where you understand that that person you're talking about has their own pressures, their own needs, wants, their own need for safety, and they're going through this curve. What your leader, as a leader, your responsibility is to help them through those changes, to help them understand and be empathetic and compassionate. So that's a bit about the change curve. Those are some of the common emotions and feelings we see in change. If you have any questions, just drop me a direct message or Google Sarah Jones Coaching. Thanks a lot.